The topic of my student curriculum project is jazz improvisation. The reason I chose this topic is because very few very few high school programs even have a jazz band as part of their program, and those that do typically do not have a very structured curriculum towards guiding jazz improvisational ideas. And I think this is a problem because jazz improvisation is a great way to encourage student creativity. And not only that, it is an essential component of the jazz language. So students that are involved in a high school big band that don't have a formal training for jazz improvisation are missing out on a big part of their jazz experience. So the concepts of this 3-year curriculum are mainly going to be centered around scales and different major modes, including Ionian, Dorian, Aeolian, and Mixolydian, and understanding the 12-bar blues concept and bebop, and playing chord changes, identifying and distinguishing between dominant 7th chord changes, major 7th, and minor 7th chord changes. 2-5-1 patterns, and eventually getting into transcriptions. This is going to gradually increase in complexity, starting with some very basic 12-bar blues in the first year, and then getting into some more intense modes and playing within chord changes in the years to follow. So the first concept is, what is jazz improvisation? I think it's important for people to understand that it's not simply playing whatever you want to play all the time. A lot of people have that misconception of jazz improvisation. And like I said earlier, jazz improvisation is a very complex language that involves a lot of different scale patterns and understanding of chord changes. And the first thing that students need to understand is the dominant tonic relationship. The best head, which means melody in jazz language, I guess you could say, is C jam blues, because that is simply 2 notes. Just to get the tune in your ears, it's da 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 da. So just the 5th note of the scale followed by the root. So da da. Those are the only 2 notes of the head to C jam blues, and that lick that I just sang to you is repeated 3 times. So students are going to improvise using various combinations of 1 and 5 of this key, which in this case is C, because the tune is called C jam blues. And students will be assessed on whether or not they use both pitches, both C and G. So next we're going to get into the B flats 12-bar blues, because that's the first key that we're really going to teach them the 12-bar blues. And the reason we started with C is just because C jam blues needs to be played in C for obvious reasons. The concept of week 2 is adding the flat 7th to the repertoire of note choices. So in this case, students will play combinations of the high octave, so high concert B flats, followed by A flat, which is the flat 7th, and F. So we're going to review the construction of major scales and whole steps and half steps, and then I'll distinguish between major scales and Mixolydian scales by showing the students the comparison of the combination of whole steps and half steps, and also demonstrating to students that the only difference is a 7th. And then after that, I'll play the Mixolydian scale and the major scale on the piano and have students hear the significant difference in the sound of those 2 scales, even though there's only 1 note that makes it different. So for this assessment, students are going to come up with as many different combinations of 8, the high octave, flat 7, and 5. Because a big part of jazz improvisation is coming up with creative choices for the order of pitches. And this is the simplest way to start with this. So in the following week, students are going to play all these combinations of the octave, the flat 7th, and the 5th, which is, for the record, is high concert B flat, high concert A flat, and F. Let me just make sure we're still recording. Good. And they're going to memorize these and improvise over 12 bars using a backing track, which all the playing assessments will be using a backing track. Gradually, we're going to add more and more note choices. In week 3 we had just used 8, flat 7, and 5. For this week, we're going to add the 6th, which is concert G. So students will play high B flat, A flat, G, and F. And they will also memorize the head to Tenor Madness by John Coltrane and Sonny Rollins. And there's the link. So the next step after learning the higher half of the concert B flat Mixolydian scale is to just play the ascending concert B flat Mixolydian scale. So starting at the bottom and going up, the ascending concert B flat Mixolydian scale. So that's all they're going to play this week, but they're going to understand the form of 12-bar blues and apply the Mixolydian scale to the other 2 chords, which are 4 and 5. In this case, concert E flat and concert F. And they'll play the B flat ascending Mixolydian scale in half notes from memory. I will not expect them to play the E flat or the F Mixolydian scales. I think that would be getting a little bit too complex too quickly. So in this week, they are going to play all 3 Mixolydian scales that represent the roots to each of the chords found in the concert B flat 12-bar blues. So students will learn a little bit about Roman numeral analysis, and they will identify the root by counting up from 1. So I'll provide to them that B flat is 1, obviously, and they'll count up 1, 2, 3, 4, B flat, C, D, E flat, to identify that E flat is the root of the 4 chord and F is the root of the 5 chord. And I'm going to have them write out the Mixolydian scale in B flat, E flat, and F in eighth notes, just the Mixolydian scale going up. And the reason I'm doing that in eighth notes is so that it fills up exactly 1 measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1 measure for each, or 1 Mixolydian scale for each measure, just going up. So the first 4 measures will all be the exact same, the concert B flat Mixolydian, and then it'll change to the E flat Mixolydian in measure 5 when that chord appears. So in this assessment, the students are playing the 3 scales separately from each other. They're not playing them with the backing track. They're just playing them from memory at quarter note equal, or in quarter notes at quarter note equals 120 separately from each other. So the 2 students need to understand that the 2 notes that typically define a chord are the 3rd and the 7th. In the case of the Mixolydian scale, the third is the same as the major scale, and the 7th is the same as the minor scale. So that's what makes the Mixolydian scale unique, is that the 3rd is 2 whole steps above the tonic, and the 7th is 1 whole step below the tonic, which that's the only mode for which that's the case. So students will have a sheet that has the 3rd and the 7th in half notes, representing each chord in the concert B flat 12-bar blues. And again, for each of these sheets, they'll be provided the chord symbols below each chord change. So for the first 4 measures, they'll have B flat, concert B flat 7, or whatever their transposition instrument key is. And then starting at measure 5, they would have the E flat 7. So the students must play the 3rds and 7th to each chord with the backing track. The 5 chords